Hey there, everybody. Today we're going to work through lesson 3 about rates. Now the learning objective is learning objective D. I can calculate a unit rate. So in your little learning journal here, our focus is learning objective D. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to calculate a unit rate. Now in class, we talked about what a rate is. We wrote it right here. So this was our rate poster. A rate is a comparison by division of two quantities, which is a ratio. A comparison of division of two quantities, that's a ratio. But this ratio is special because it has different units on the top and the bottom. So that's what makes it a rate. You're also going to use the word per. So like 60 miles per hour. Miles is a different unit from hour. Or 4 arms per 2 people. So arms and people are different units. So make sure that you wrote on this back of your learning journal sheet, make sure that you wrote what a rate is. And if you didn't do that yet, go ahead and pause this video right now and copy this down into your math learning journal. All right, so let's go ahead and start with this lesson. It is on page 31. So if you're not on page 31 of your book, go ahead and pause the video and get to page 31. All right, page 31, it's just basically given us an overall definition of rates. What we really want to go into is the next page. So our learning objective is to be able to calculate a unit rate. So let's go over this again. A rate is a ratio comparing two quantities of different kinds of units. A unit rate has a denominator of 1 unit when the rate is written as a fraction. So to write a rate as a unit rate, divide the numerator and the denominator of the rate by the denominator. Go ahead and circle this last sentence. Circle this sentence right here. You might use that when we write our reflection in our math learning journal later. To write a rate as a unit rate, divide the numerator and denominator of the rate by the denominator. Now, this is an example. If the ratio is 15 to 5, we're talking about characters per seconds. So you write it as a rate, 15 characters per 5 seconds. And then if you divide the numerator and the denominator by this denominator, the smaller number, 15 divided by 5 is 3, 5 divided by 5 is 1. So you might even want to put that in there, divided by 5, divided by 5. All right, so you're dividing by that denominator. Now, notice that the denominator is the greatest common factor. So just like what we learned with ratios, to simplify a fraction or a ratio written in fraction form, you divide by the greatest common factor. All right, let's take a look at our examples here. Example 1, it's pretty much what we just did. Now, I would like you to pause this video right now, and after you pause it, I want you to copy this down by example 1. Again, this is something that you might want to use in your learning journal later. To simplify, divide numerator and denominator by the greatest common factor. So go ahead and pause and write that and then replay again. All right, so now that we've written this right here, we're going to go through example 1. Samantha picked 45 oranges in 5 minutes. Write this rate as a unit rate. So what we want to be able to do, a unit rate has a denominator of 1. So we want to write the rate as a fraction. That's 45 oranges over 5 minutes, or 45 oranges per 5 minutes. Comparing the number of oranges to the number of minutes, that's why we have oranges in the numerator. So now we want to divide by the greatest common factor, which is this denominator here, 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. That's key because it gives us a 1 in the denominator. And remember, a unit rate has to have a denominator of 1. So that's why you're dividing here by 5. And again, that's the greatest common factor. 45 divided by 5 is 9. So you could read it as the unit rate is 9 oranges per 1 minute. So 9 oranges per minute. All right, now let's go ahead and do down at the bottom, this first example A. Emma downloaded 35 songs in 5 minutes. How many songs did she download per minute? So A right here, we want to have 35 songs per 5 minutes. And the next step was to divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor, which is the denominator, so we can get a unit rate with 1 in the denominator. So if we divide both by 5, which is this number right here, that will give us 35 divided by 5 is 7 songs per 5 minutes. So she would have listened to, 7 songs per 1 minute. Oops, did you catch that? So 7 songs per minute, because 5 divided by 5 is 1. So the answer is that she can download 7 songs per minute. 7 songs per minute. All right, cool. So that's the simple, basic way of finding a unit rate. Let's take a look at example 2. The Australian dragonfly can travel 18 miles in 30 minutes. How far can the dragonfly travel in 1 minute? So if you write the rate as a fraction, 18 miles per 30 minutes, you compare the distance to the number of minutes, miles per minute, and divide. Now here's the tricky part. Before, you could just divide by the denominator. It was a smaller number and both numbers it would work to divide by. But in this situation, we can't divide 18 by 30 and come out with an easy number. We can't divide 30 by 18. So what we have to do again is find the greatest common factor. So you might want to write a note that this is the greatest common factor. So 18 divided by 6 is 3, 30 divided by 6 is 5. So the ratio 3 to 5 cannot be simplified to a whole number rate. Like before, we had a 1 in the denominator. You can't do that in this situation. So the way that you write it is 3 miles per 5 minutes, or as the unit rate of 3/5 of a mile to 1 minute. So the dragonfly, the answer to this question, how far can he travel in 1 minute? 3/5 of a mile. So example 1, we could easily get a 1 in the denominator for that unit rate. In example 2, we couldn't, so we had to call it a fraction, 3/5 of a mile in 1 minute. So that's what we're going to do here in example B with Jonathan. So this is example B right here. Do this with me. And by the way, when we're doing these examples together, if you need to pause it to slow down and catch up, go ahead and do it. Or maybe you want to watch it first and then you want to go back and do it on your own. So Jonathan's baking several loaves of bread to sell in his bakery. He used 9 cups of water and 12 cups of whole wheat flour. How much water was used per cup of flour? So we need to make a fraction that has water per flour. So water over the flour. So 9 cups of water over 12 cups of flour. 9 cups of water over 12 cups of flour. Okay, so we can't divide by 9, we can't divide by 12, it just won't work. So we need to find the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is 3. So you divide both numerator and denominator by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3 cups of water. Sorry, it's really hard to write on this with the book bent. And then 12 divided by 3 would be 4 cups of flour. So since we don't have a 1 in the denominator, our ratio here, 3 cups of water for every 4 cups of flour, you can just look here. 3 cups of water, 3/4 of a cup of water in 1 cup of flour. So just like they had to turn this into a fraction, part of the 1, that's what we have to do here. How much water was used per cup of flour? 3/4 cup of water. So 3/4 cup of water per 1 cup of flour. Now, later on, these are the 2 examples that you're going to be using in the practice a lot. right? So when it says to refer back to example 1 and 2, you also have these examples of 1 and 2 that we did down here. All right, let's go to example 3. This one's a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to walk you through it. An adult's heart beats about 2,100 times every 30 minutes. A baby's heart beats about 2,600 times every 20 minutes. How many more beats does a baby's heart beat in 60 minutes than the adult's heart? So if you first find the unit rate, that can get you beats per minute. So the numerator and denominator was divided here by the denominator. Same with this one's divided by 20 because that's the denominator. And it gave them 70 beats in 1 minute, 130 beats in 1 minute. But the question asks, how many more beats does a baby's heart beat in 60 minutes than an adult heart? So using that unit rate of 70 beats per minute for the adult, 70 times 60, because they want to know in 60 minutes, not in 1 minute. That's 4,200. For the baby, 130 beats times 60 minutes is going to be 7,800 beats. And they just want to know the difference. So they took the babies and they took away the adults, and that gave you 3,600. So a baby's heart beats 3,600 more times in 60 minutes than an adult heart. Now, this was complicated because you had to do this step 2, where you find the number of beats in 60 minutes, and it was kind of using big numbers. So we're going to cross off this, and we're going to do an example together on page 34 that's a little bit easier. So go ahead and turn to page 34. We're going to look at number 5. All right, so this is page 34, number 5. It says Molly shot 20 baskets in 4 minutes. Nico shot 42 baskets in 6 minutes. So how many more baskets did Nico shoot per minute? So the first thing that they want you to do in the example is find the unit rate. Then we can find the difference. So we're going to find the unit rate. So this is for Molly. Molly had 20 baskets in 4 minutes. To find the unit rate, we divide by the greatest common factor, or the denominator in this case. All right, 20 divided by 4 is 5 baskets per 1 minute. So 5 baskets per 1 minute. So that's Molly. Now we need to find Nico. So we need to get Nico's unit rate. This is Molly's unit rate. Let's get Nico. All right, Nico could shoot 42 baskets in 6 minutes. So let's divide. 42 can be divided by 6. 6 can be divided by 6, and that'll give us our denominator of 1, which is what we want. So 42 divided by 6 would be 7 baskets in 1 minute. So if Molly can shoot 5 baskets in a minute, Nico can shoot 7 baskets in a minute. How many more did Nico shoot? He shot 7, she shot 5. 7 take away 5 baskets is 2. So he could shoot 2 baskets more than Molly. And if you need to pause that and work it and then look back at this, go ahead and do it. If you need to rewind and see that again, this is a good, easier way to do example 3. Okay, so there's just one more thing, and it's super basic. Just to recap, we had to find a unit rate. A unit rate is going to have 1 as a denominator. Sometimes you have a situation where you can't get 1 as the denominator, so it turns into a fraction of 1. So this turned into 3/5 of 1, 3/5 of a mile to 1 minute. Then we went over here and we calculated unit rates and found the difference. And in this last one, we're just going to change the rate to money. So it's finding a unit price. You can use what you know about unit rates to find a unit price. The unit price is the cost per unit. To write a price as a unit price, divide the numerator and denominator of the rate by the denominator. So same thing, you're dividing by the denominator to get a 1 down in the denominator. So it's $9 per ticket. If it costs $36 for 4 tickets, the unit price is $9 per ticket. All right, here's just a quick example of that. This is on page 34. 4 potted plants cost $88. So what's the price per plant? You write the rate as a fraction, $88 for 4 plants. You compare the total cost to the number of plants. So we're going to divide so we can get it per 1 plant. So divide 88 by 4 and 4 by 4. And that's going to give you $22 for 1 plant. The unit price is going to be $22 per plant. Each plant costs $22. We just want to make sure that we show our work. So make sure you show what you're dividing by when you show your work today. All right, the in-class practice. I want you, for your in-class practice, to do 1, 2, then we'll do 6, and if you have time to go back and do 3 and 4, we will. So let's do 1 and 2 first. Go ahead and do number 1. So what you're going to do is you're going to pause this video, you're going to do number 1, and then you're going to play it again to see how we do number 1, just to make sure that you got it right, okay? So go ahead and pause and do number 1. All right, here's how you do number 1. So we want to write it as a unit rate, which means we want to write it out as a ratio, and then we want to simplify it so 1 is in the denominator. So if you have 44 points per 4 quarters, 44 points per 4 quarters, and you divide by the denominator, so divide by 4, divide by 4, 44 divided by 4 is going to be 11 points per 4 divided by 4 is 1 quarter. So the answer is going to be, you can get 11 points per quarter. All right, now let's do number 2. So pause it and do number 2, and then push play again to see if you got it right. So this is number 2. 125 feet in 5 seconds. We want to know how many feet per second. So 125 feet, 5 seconds. You divide by the denominator. They can both divide by 5. So I'm going to divide both by 5. So 125 divided by 5 is 25 feet. 5 divided by 5 is 1 second. So your answer is going to be 25 feet per second. Cool. I like to circle the answers so they really show up. All right. Now, oh, there's the bell. But that's not for you. That's just a bell after school. Okay, actually, before we do number 6, I want to do number 4, because number 4 is one of those examples where you can't just divide by the denominator to get the unit rate. So let's do number 4, 12 meters in 28 seconds. We want to know how many meters per second. So this is just like example 2 on the other page. So if we have 12 meters in 28 seconds, see that? You can't divide both by 28. In fact, you can't divide both by 12. So we need to find the greatest common factor. So let's think about that for a minute. They could both be divided by 2. They could divide it by 2, but is there something greater? They could both be divided by 4. They couldn't both be divided by 6, so this must be divided by 4. Let's try it. Let's see if we can get it in simplest form. 12 divided by 4 is going to be 3 meters. 28 seconds divided by 4 is going to be 7 seconds. And look at that. You can't break down 3 and 7 anymore. So that's the answer. Now remember, since there's not a 1 in the denominator, you turn it into a fraction. So it's 3/7 of a meter in 1, wow, that one is really scary, in 1 second. All right, now let's go down and do number 6, because that one has a unit price, like in example 4. So let's skip down to this, pause it and do it, and then play it again and see if you got it right. For Carolina's birthday, her mom took her and 4 friends to a water park. Carolina's mom paid $40 for 5 student tickets. What was the price for one student ticket? So we're just trying to find a unit price for one. That's the key number. We want one in the denominator. So she had $40 per 5 tickets. So if you put that $40 for 5 tickets, we divide the numerator and the denominator by, look, we can use 5 to get that one ticket at the bottom. So we'll divide by 5, divide by 5. Now 40 divided by 5 is 8. So it must have been $8 per ticket. So that's our answer. $8 per ticket. Yay! All right, now, if you still have a chunk of time in class, we could do this one last example, number 3. So if you have time, let's do number 3. Pause it and do number 3, and then play it and see if you were right. We're finding a unit rate, so we want to get a 1 in the denominator when we simplify. 360 miles per 12 gallons of gas. So you can travel 360 miles on 12 gallons. How many can you travel on 1 gallon? Well, we have to divide by 12 to get a 1 over here. So 12 divided by 12 will give us 1 gallon. So let's see how many miles we can drive. 360 divided by 12. Can you do that without a calculator? Let's see. If not, you could use one. 360 divided by 12 is 30 miles. All right, so your answer is 30 miles per gallon. Did you notice all of these rates? We're trying to get a 1 in the denominator. When you can't get a 1 in the denominator like this one, you have to use it as a fraction. Down here, a 1 to get our price. And then we always use this word per when we're putting the answer for rates. Remember, this one was a little different because we had to find this unit rate, and subtract to see how many more baskets Nico shot per minute. So your homework tonight is going to be on page 35. And on page 35, we want you to do number 1, number 2, number 4, and number 6. That's what the juice box is. And number 7. So here's what you're going to get a taste of. For number 1 and 2, it's just like example 1. Number 4, is going to be like example 2. And then number 6 is like example 4, and so is number 7. So we're not even going to do one of the hard example 3 ones. All right, so you have 5 questions for homework. If you have time in class, go ahead and start them right now.